Hello, Claire.
Bonjour, Olivier. How are you?
Fine, and you? So it's the first live in English for us, and for my entire life for me. So it will be quite difficult, but I think it will be easier for French-speaking people to understand me with my beautiful accent. So I think it will be very, very cool for them. So, and what we will do for today, Claire? It's a question for you.
Sorry, I was looking at the comments. Hello Clément, hello Xavier, hello Romain. Everyone is here. They are making popcorn, ready to... Hello Angeline. Thomas, everyone is here. So today, how are you, Olivier?
Fine, fine. It's the end of the day in Europe. For those who are looking us from US, good morning, I think, because it's quite early for you. So for today, we will talk and we'll crash test. We will crash test Xano and WeWeb. Alors, in French, we pronounce Xano, but I know that Prakash pronounces Xano. So the good one is probably Xano. but French is French, so we have some time difficulties to do things in other language. So. And we're pleased to introduce Raphael, CEO of WeWeb, in few minutes. We'll take some time for to wait everybody coming in the live, and of course we will welcome Prakash, CEO of Xano. So Xavier, called Xano. Xavier, I think I will call you Xavier for now. Xano, like Xano, Xavier, voilà. So, we probably welcome Raphael and Prakash, don't you think?
Yes.
So, welcome Prakash.
Hello.
Welcome Raphael.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
Nice to see you with us. It is a real pleasure to have you together to speak about our favorite no-code stack. As we say for now, our preferred visual programming stack. I think we can talk about vocabulary because I don't know if we need to use. I don't know. We probably can talk about this. I know that Prakash, you have changed the wording a few weeks ago. I think from the no-code solution to the visual programming solution. So
yes, I can speak to that just briefly. You know, I think one of the things that, well, first of all, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having myself. It's always a pleasure to be with you. You know, Olivier, you know, I've gotten to know you over the past year. Really appreciate it. Claire, we spent some time at No Code Summit, and Raph, of course, my front end superhero buddy. Always a pleasure to be together. And hello everyone that is watching the stream. Yeah, so for no code to visual development, one of the things that I have noticed, especially when talking to larger companies that are considering leveraging tools like no code to build business critical applications, is that sometimes the word no code is associated with limitation. It is associated with things that cannot scale, and also things that are inflexible. And as a result, I've had actually a couple times executives not even meet with me because we were just another no code tool, which is crazy. They haven't seen it. They haven't, you know, used it, they just assume that we're like everything else. And I think that as our tools have evolved, right, like, you know, we've worked very, very hard, as I know WeWeb has as well, to overcome a lot of those limitations and to give the public something where you can start with visual development or no code and scale. We believe that the language and terminology should also change and evolve as well. So, you know, one of the things, and we're not the only tool to do this, but we're proposing that we evolve the language. And in this way, over time, we hope that the conversation will shift, because I do think there are traditional no-code tools that are simple, like they connect one service to another, simple workflows. But tools like WeWeb and Xano are very different. You're building scalable applications. You're able to deploy in a more flexible way. So that's kind of why we have pushed for that evolution.
Raphael?
We did not. So we agree with the whole movement. Personally speaking, I prefer visual programming or visual development rather than no code, because I think it encapsulates better, you know, what our platform can deliver and what they are. You know, the essence of them is you build visually, but eventually you have code, or if you need code, you can use it, right? So in that sense, I think no code became outdated. However, I also know that no code is kind of a brand right now. So it's difficult to, I don't know, to position ourselves without it. But I agree that I would love the whole industry to shift towards visual programming or visual development. And we saw the whole movement that was initiated by you guys as Xano and some others. And we found that very interesting. We just didn't take the time to kind of pursue it. So if you look at our website, it's kind of messy. It's written no code somewhere, and sometimes it's written like visual programming, and sometimes visual development. So I think we have to sanitize this a little bit, and to use instead of no code, probably, you know, visual programming. However, just thinking about the pure, I would say, from a marketing perspective, no code is still a very important keyword for most of our users to find us. So, you know, there's a fine line between kind of, I would say, leading the semantics towards visual programming, and at the same time being careful to be recognizable when people do some search. And so that's why we knew that, you know, once we start opening this topic, we would have to be very cautious with this, because it would have obviously an SEO impact, and we want people to find us online when they are looking for a no-code platform to build front end. And so in that sense, you know, when the whole movement started, we thought, oh, maybe we should do it. And then once we saw that it would have an impact on SEO and everything, we kind of stopped. And because it's a profound topic, and it's hard to manage, I would say, from a marketing perspective. However, at a personal level, and I know everyone in the team at WeWeb is the same, we all prefer visual programming or visual development because we think it's a better fit.
Yeah. And I just to echo what Raphael said, I think this is very much the beginning. And, you know, it's actually unclear, like, will it be visual development or visual programming? We're not sure. But in this transitionary phase, yeah, we have to, you know, still associate ourselves with the no. Like, if you look at our Twitter handle, we're still no code backend.
Yeah.
So we're still making this evolution. However, I think it is important to set the intention, to say we are something different and we're going to start evolving. That's why it's an evolution, right? It's not just a cutover. And, you know, it was even in going to the No Code Summit and talking about it this year, and being as forward as I was I was on the fence. I was like, well, you know, is this something that we should do? What will this do? But what's interesting is after I said it, and I in the main stage, I kind of talked about visual development. We had also a talk track around it. Everyone on LinkedIn was talking about it. You know, I got lots of emails, and so clearly people want something different. So the goal is really to, like, as Raphael said, we have to be discoverable. We have to be indexable where people are searching for us, but we should try to get the space to evolve their way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe at one point it will be like, you know, no code / low code. Maybe it's going to become no code / visual dev or whatever. We'll see. But that's yeah, that's an interesting topic.
I think we don't have the problem with low code. Low code is more first, it doesn't define itself as against something like no code, and low code is probably less problematic language and definition, and visual programming low code probably a good way to speak about our industry, I think.
We have the question in French because next week is the general meeting of No Code France, which hosts us on this stream, and we had the question about the name, and the question was, can we call it the visual programming for French-speaking people? Is it a bit long?
It's true that no code is very catchy. And visual programming is a bit, in French you would say programmation visuelle or développement visuel. It's not as catchy as no code. And even no code in French makes sense. I mean, people get it. Even though it's it's rooted in English, people get it. So it's not an easy topic.
And I also don't think that any one tool, be it us or anyone, can define this. I think it's it's putting the idea out there that we think that there's clearly a stigma with no code, and especially as you get to bigger companies, how can we evolve that? So I don't think everyone has to immediately start going over a rebrand. I found it funny that once I said it, even Emmanuel from Bubble and Fabian from Make, I was like, oh, I guess we have to say visual. I'm like, you don't have to do anything. But I do think again, this evolution of thinking is definitely required.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think some of people are attending to this live don't know very well what WeWeb and Xano could do for them. Probably you could present us your solutions.
I can start if you want.
Sure.
Prakash.
Front first.
WeWeb is a no-code or visual programming platform to build the front end of any web applications. And so the way we differentiate from other platforms is, so what we have in common is this visual editor where you can, drag and drop elements and start building your UI. It's very much pixel perfect. So you can go as far as where you can go with Webflow, for example, in terms of, I would say, details in the front end you want to build. And then the main differentiators are, we have, I would say, 3. The first one is that you can build the front end logic as well with WeWeb. So you can really build powerful web applications, and whenever you need to build the logic in the front end, you have a workflow builder. You can build functions whenever it's required. You can also, code in WeWeb. So that's the first one. Second one is that we are backend agnostic, and so that's why lots of our users really love the WeWeb and Xano stack because WeWeb can connect with any backend, and it works perfectly well with Xano. And it's among the top plugins that are being used at WeWeb because we have a deep integration with our friends at Xano. And so when we first started WeWeb, just to give a bit of context, it was actually a website builder for headless systems. So it was the same philosophy, but only for websites. And then we switched to web apps because we figured our users told us that this is what they were expecting and this is bringing much more value. And so by default, WeWeb is decoupled as an architecture. And so, when people already have their backend, it's a good default option when you want to build your front end faster to use WeWeb, and you will not have any security issues or performance issues because, again, the default architecture we chose is the decoupled one. And the third differentiator is the fact that you can export code with WeWeb. So you build visually, and then what you have as an output is a clean, standard Vue.js application. And you can either, deploy it on infrastructure that we provide as a service. So it's like one-click deploy on a CDN. Or you can get your code, and you can run it through your CI/CD. You can build it on your servers and deploy it on your servers. And so this is a big differentiator, and especially for larger companies and big corporates, because it means that there is no lock-in. And our customers can really manage their production. So the way I see WeWeb is really like an IDE to build your front end visually, but the output is the same. It's clean standard code that's open source and that can be interpreted by any machines.
Awesome. So Yep, I'm so with Xano, we are a visual development platform for the backend. And for those of you that aren't necessarily familiar, when we say backend, there's basically three components. There is the server piece where your data, your business logic, everything is hosted. There's the database, which is the heart of your applications, the files for your application. And then there is the API, which is basically the glue that connects your backend to a front end and to other services. So we provide those three things in a box called Xano, and we make it really accessible for people that might be graduating from other tools, for example, such as Airtable, and they have more complex use cases. What separates us from other no-code or visual development platforms out there is we have from day one been focused on three primary principles. The first is scalability, the second is security, and that third is reliability. These are all things that traditionally no-code tools have not met in terms of, like, especially when it comes to enterprise expectations. This is why we say we're an enterprise-grade visual development platform for the backend. So you're able to start with us and scale without limits. Another big competitive advantage for us, outside of being a visual development platform, is the way that we deploy. We are able to deploy in many different configurations. Every paid account gets a single tenant instance, so a dedicated resource you can deploy anywhere in the world, and that's on GCP. However, you're able to take that and move that to your own cloud. We have on-prem deployments. We have single workspace deployments. We have very flexible deployments to meet the needs of a large bank to a government organization, because we know how important that is as you start to build on Xano, the trust that you have to start and scale with us over time. And finally, as Raph kind of alluded to, this visual way to build your APIs we believe is going to be the future of how people build software. And I'm sure we're going to touch on this, but even if you look at all of the demos that are coming out with AI automatically generating software for you, you need a visual canvas to pick up where AI leaves off. And the joke that I always say is, right now, when I text because basically what you're doing is you're texting a chatbot to build you software. When I text my wife and I forget an emoji or an exclamation point, she misunderstands me. So now I'm assuming that an AI is going to be able to understand everything that I want to build the software that I want, right? Not going to happen. So you need this visual place where you can trust what the AI has put together and then pick up the pieces and continue to build. So that's just Xano in a nutshell, what we focus on and why we believe that visual programming and visual development is really the future of how people will build software.
Yeah, so perfect. You answer, I think, the Angelina question that I've displayed on the screen. That's clear. I've got some question. First, WeWeb, is WeWeb optimized for low-code backend like Xano and any other custom backend too? I know that some user of WeWeb use their own code backend and use WeWeb to build. Have you some example?
Yeah, so
in this case?
You can use WeWeb with any backend as long as the functions are exposed through a REST API, a GraphQL API, or a SOAP API. We also have, direct SQL, the SQL plugin, but we often don't recommend it because it's not very secured. And so it's always better to go, to connect your front end with an API, right? And so WeWeb is extremely optimized for Xano, and I very often, most of the time, recommend Xano because we know it's like our best plugin. And so the experience building with WeWeb and Xano is better than the experience building with WeWeb and REST API plugin. You could use Xano and a REST API plugin with WeWeb and build with it, but it's not as good as the Xano plugin because the Xano plugin basically exposes the functions that Xano lets us expose in the front end. And therefore the experience is much smoother and the integration is much, much better. So yeah, like I said, we are entirely backend agnostic, but we have native integrations with some of the backends out there, and our best integration is with Xano.
Clearly. We have a lot of questions, but I think we also have to do some things because we are in no-code crash test and we have a concept. But just last question before we began to work and to build things. Could we deploy Xano, WeWeb on my laptop and work on LAN only? Quite an interesting question for someone who don't know how to build how we are used to build a no-code solution. So I think there are two questions, because one, with the build part, can we build on laptop, and the other, can we run on premise in an internal network of a company?
So for the front end, it's easy because it's really only front end files. So you can run them locally wherever you want. So we don't really have issues with that. And your web application is going to work as long as then the backend functions are being exposed, right? And then the question is more, I would say, on Xano side.
Yeah, so on our side, we do have something available, like a single Docker workspace version that people actually use to develop offline on their laptop. It is currently only available for enterprise organizations, especially during a POC. However, we are actively working on something that will launch in the first quarter of next year that will make this accessible to more people.
Exciting. Yeah, and so just to build on this a little bit, you can deploy WeWeb locally, but the code that you will have generated with WeWeb, however, the SaaS WeWeb itself, the editor, cannot run locally. And I don't think it was part of the question, but it's, I just want to mention it, that WeWeb, the editor, only works in SaaS and doesn't work on premise. However, whatever you built with WeWeb, the output can be deployed anywhere and can be run anywhere.
Nice.
Okay, nice. So I think we have to work a little bit, Claire. I think you could present our use case if you want. I could share. Perfect, you have it.
Find it. So our little use case in no-code crash test is about maybe in a city, you spotted something on the street and you want to tell it to people managing the city, and you want to share a photo and the street address where you found it, details about it, and an email address and the name. And so that the use case we use in all the application we're testing in no-code crash test.
So for this time, we have
Xavier, it's not.
I don't know how to translate it in English. Sorry.
It's not a denunciation app. It's. So maybe I start building the front in WeWeb. So we just created a project, and we didn't start with. I just go to the dashboard. So you can create through the marketplace. You can select directly something, but Olivier doesn't want me to do it.
You don't have the right to cheat.
He asked me to start from crash, so.
So while Claire will try to build, I know she will succeed without any problem because we both are used to work with WeWeb and Xano, so it won't be difficult for us. I've got some other question to ask you. One of the question is how to differentiate your solution from the other, because in French, I always say il n'y a pas un no-code, mais il y a des no-code. There's a lot of no-code solution, and behind the no-code word, we have too many things that are so different. So it's not always easy to to set, and it's the goal of this this live, to help people to understand what the focus of a solution and what we can build with solutions. So where did you position yourself on the landscape?
Prakash, you want to start?
Sure. I think one of the things that you'll notice, even from the very beginning, when we launched, we made a very conscious decision not to abstract away the language. So, for example, we don't use things like, workflows or recipes or things. We call everything what it is, a database record. We use API, webhooks, because we believe that it is our responsibility as a tool vendor to educate those that want to build on how software is built and how to connect to the other ecosystem of tools that all use standardized language. Also, when you get into larger organizations, that is the language that central IT and the software architects speak. So you should be able to speak that way. In this way, we from day one, we've positioned ourselves as a tool that you should graduate into. So there was a question I think Angeline asked earlier, if we're accessible by, for example, a software user or an Airtable user. There's no question, like, we're more complex to pick up. You have to understand some of those foundational principles. We've always been a tool where we basically pick up where those tools leave off. You graduate into us when you have more complex use cases. Now, we're making it easier to use, but we always want to serve the more complex use cases within the no-code visual development landscape. And so if you have something simple, like you're just connecting one service to another, I would say you shouldn't use us. You should use a tool like Zapier. You should, and then once that gets a little more complex, you may want to use a tool like Make. But if you want to build something with background tasks that is processing more data, that's connecting to multiple systems, that has very strict requirements around security and compliance and reliability, this is what Xano is very good for.
I'd say with WeWeb, the positioning of WeWeb is very much the same. It's kind of the mirror of Xano, but for the front end. So the learning curve of WeWeb is steeper than software. However, what you can build with WeWeb is, I would say, much more advanced, much more scalable, much more secured. We took the same decisions from product perspective as the Xano team. And in WeWeb, we try to keep the same language as in the coded world. And so thanks to this, many people often tell us, many users often tell us that they have learned like the real, I would say, web applications or web terminology with WeWeb. And now they feel confident even talking to developers. And so to us, again, the word of visual programming or visual development here makes a lot of sense, because in this case, I think they are equal, right? It's just like the developers, they just know how to program and use the code language. However, they are managing, they are building their applications with the same concepts in a WeWeb and Xano. But one thing I'd like to add to that conversation is that this line that defines, I would say, the line that defines our positioning in the market is becoming blurry, and will become even more blurry as we make our platforms more accessible and as AI comes into play. And because, thanks to AI, there's a high chance that the learning curve will become almost flat because you will use natural language to get started, at least on our platform. And so therefore the learning curve, which is today a big differentiator between software and WeWeb, for example, will probably be removed, right? And so now we are doing a little bit of testing and integrating AI in our platform, and the results are astonishing. You just ask something in natural language and you have a very proper output. But like Prakash said at the beginning, you would have to, I would say, understand the concepts if you want to own what's being built by the AI. And so nevertheless, I think part of our mission is to teach people the web concepts so that they feel confident that whatever has been built through the AI or by themselves, they really own it, and then they can, do changes, and they understand what is being built, right? So I think, that's part of our mission, to teach everyone about web concepts. This will not change. However, the positioning in the market and the lines will become blurry as we make those platforms easier to use, and especially with the help of AI.
I've got a lot of questions about AI, but I keep the question for the end of the emission. So stay online. It will be the best part of the live. Some people are talking about Bubble, of course, because Bubble is the old guy in the landscape, I think, and a lot of people are moving to Bubble because some of constraints and limit of the tools, and are working to go to the Xano and WeWeb stack, because it's really more opportunities to build a stronger product and more difficult use case. What can you give these people about best practice to make this transition smoothly?
Prakash, you want to start? Because I think for you guys, it's
Yeah, we can start. Or yeah, I can start. Thanks, Raph. I think, well, first of all, I want to recognize, and I say this a lot, but I don't think that we would be where we are today as a business, as recognized, without Bubble. Bubble really forged a path, I think, for a lot of no-code visual development platforms to and built a lot of awareness that it was possible to create things without having to know how to code. So I have a lot of respect for that team, that organization. I think where we come into the picture is when people that are building more complex applications in Bubble, and when I say that, I mean maybe their workflows are more complex. Maybe they have stricter security requirements. Maybe they need very particular deployment options. They usually want a way to have Xano power the back end and keep Bubble on the front end, or sometimes even migrate away and use Xano and WeWeb. So there's a couple ways that we encourage users to do this. First, if they choose to stick with Bubble on the front end, there's no natural integration there, so it's a little bit more work. But there are tools built by the community to help make this connection possible, and there's lots of documentation and video around this. And in this way, they're able to leverage Xano for the back end. They don't have to incur the new workload unit pricing that Bubble's introduced. And they have flexibility in terms of just scaling to the moon. So what I usually tell people is start with your heaviest workloads in Xano. Just migrate those. You don't have to go the whole migration into Xano. Just start with the heaviest workloads, see if it works. And if that works, then you can start making a transition to more things if it makes sense. And then obviously, similar to Raph, the WeWeb Xano pairing, you can see culturally we're very similar. We look at the world, we look at the evolution of the space in the same way. And also the way we've coupled our applications, it's a very natural fit. So migrating, I'll let Raph speak to the front end piece of it, but we obviously will say you'll have an easier time should you choose a tool like WeWeb, because we work very seamlessly together, as you're going to witness here in this demo.
Awesome.
And I really like the way you think to try the heaviest problem of the application and try to touch the limit and hit or not the limit, because it's not easy to hit the limit with the stack. So I think it's completely like the question that Angeline asked about what's the limit with a tool like Xano and WeWeb versus iCode, of course. Where is the limit for you? For me, there's not so much limit because your low-code solution. And but what do you think about what's the limit for you?
Yeah. So well, maybe what we'll do is, Raph, why don't you answer the front end piece of the bubble, and then we can speak to the kind of the limitation piece.
I wish I had a magic, way of telling people how to transition. And by the way, I want to say the same as you did, Prakash, that we really respect the Bubble team and what they did. I even told him to Emmanuel, and I thanked him for what they are doing. And I really think that for many use cases, I mean, what I tell users when they hesitate between using our platform and go and use Bubble, I always tell them, it depends which architecture you want to have. So if you want to be decoupled, then it makes a lot of sense to use WeWeb for the front end, and then you can pick the back end of your choice. If you'd rather have everything in one platform, and if you feel more comfortable that way, then Bubble is your way to go. Because if you want to use a decoupled architecture, you will have to pick two platforms. You will have to pick WeWeb and Xano, and then you will have to learn both. So it's a choice, right, of architecture, and then it depends on how scalable you want things to be, how performant, how secured, and all of your technical requirements, right? So I always tend to frame the problem of choosing the platform like this. And then when it comes to transitioning, because it happens, we have many users transitioning from Bubble to WeWeb and another backend. We tend to say, start with the backend, interestingly, because you will have to, the whole logic and everything is probably the most complex to transition. And if you felt comfortable in the front-end builder of Bubble, there's a high chance that you will feel very comfortable in our front-end builder, because it was, we are extremely focused on front-end building. So I consider WeWeb front-end builder to be probably easier to use than Bubbles, especially if you want to start building responsive front ends, etc., etc. So that would be my take. And then for the question about limitations, I always say real quick that virtually there's none, because in WeWeb you can code and you can also import your own components. So you can code your components, import them in the platform, and start building it. However, for the no-code world, I like to frame it like this. With WeWeb, you cannot do SSR. So if you need something that is like a marketplace that is very heavy on SEO, WeWeb is probably not the right choice, because you cannot pre-render or you cannot server-side render your pages. That's one limitation that we have. You can build PWAs, but you cannot build native mobile applications. So if you want to build native mobile applications, either go with Flutterflow if you want to stay no code, or code. And there's one thing we don't do as well, which is we don't support for now, but that's probably, maybe in the future we'll do it, which is offline mode. We don't do it, right? And so if you want to do offline, and even if you like WeWeb, maybe you'd rather code today. So these are the limitations that we have.
Yeah, I'll speak to just at a very high level about some of the limitations with Xano. So and when to think about transitioning. So I guess, Angeline, to your question around the more complex use cases, I think Raph was right to point out just, Bubble's approach is like everything is in one versus having a decoupled back end versus front end. And when you're building for scale, you're architecturally, that is the right way to build. So just to be clear there. And this is why people generally start to make this shift. I think the second thing is just a cost consideration. As your workloads become more heavy, more complex, as you start to grow, that cost will grow in a linear fashion. And so you just have to think about, we're more instance-based in the sense that in our self-serve plans, you basically are given a sandbox of compute, and you can do as many requests as you want, as many workloads you want in that sandbox of compute. And then as you graduate, even as you get into our enterprise tier, you can pay for the compute. We don't take any margin off of that. So you pay for their instance cost, and then you can scale to the moon with that one instance. So it kind of just depends where you are in your business. In terms of limitations, we don't support a code export, for example, like WeWeb does for now. But we just announced Xano Script at the No Code Summit. So we will have a scripting piece to Xano coming out in Q1 of next year. And the second thing, also for offline consideration, there's some database offline stuff that I know you could go very deep into that we just only scratched the surface of. So if you have a heavy offline consideration component, then we're probably not going to be the right fit versus doing something bespoke.
The offline consideration is really a small part of the business for now. I think it's very specific use cases. For now, we can be online nearly everywhere, so it's not the same problem as 10 years ago, I think. And it leads to develop a very more complex application when we want to build something offline, and a business application offline is very complex to build. I think I already tried some of this, and it's a very complex problem. What about the volume we can handle with no code? Thomas asked us about can we build an application for 1,000 of employees? I know the response, but
only if you choose Xano.
The problem is not in the front, of course, because with CDN we can handle millions of instances of the application. It's not the problem, but in Xano, and the same question about the volume. I think I already know that in Xano you can handle millions of rows in tables without any problem. But how many users?
Yeah, I mean, really the sky is the limit. Again, the way we've architected Xano. So just to give a primer, most no-code applications are built in a multi-tenant fashion. And what this means, it's an architectural decision that they have made when they build the tool that basically can be correlated to an apartment complex. Like all of the users in the platform are in the same apartment. So if one neighbor is having a party or there's a lot of people, that means that it's going to affect the sleep of all the other neighbors that live in that apartment complex. Versus a single tenant, which means that each user has its own house, right? And they're separated from everyone else. We made the decision very early on to build and architect Xano in a way where every single user had a single tenant resource. It's deployed with Docker, orchestrated with Kubernetes, which basically means that the way that it's architected, you could start very small on a self-serve plan, and then you could scale to any requirement. And so we have enterprise customers that have outgrown our self-serve plan, but because of the way we've architected it, they've moved to their own cloud, right? And as long as you can believe in one of the cloud providers, their level of scale, we've seen companies deployed multi-country. They're processing millions of transactions, millions of euros of transactions with no problems at all. So Xano is really meant to scale on any cloud or any kind of compute that you put it on top of. So really, there's no limitation there. I do think that it's important, and we need to do a better job of educating on this. Like once you go, for example, to our launch plan, that launch plan doesn't mean that you can, for example, scale to the moon. That's the first start, right? Like we give you a certain amount of compute. We have other accounts that have, or other plans that have more compute. But as you start to grow, you'll naturally graduate to your own cloud where you can have full control over how you scale.
Do you have some example of what are your biggest customers and how many volume of data and users they have?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's like what I was mentioning. Probably the most notable is our Heimstaden customer. We came with them to the No Code Summit. You should definitely watch their talk on stage. They basically are processing hundreds of millions of requests in a given month, and millions of euros of transactions in a given day. And this is important because they're a property management tool. And it's a full cycle property management. So you're handling, the renters, you're handling operations, you're managing the transactional piece. All of that is flowing through Xano. So that's probably the most public notable one. But even, for example, we have another customer called Fluence in the States. They're part of Siemens Energy Group, and they build connectors, right, that connect to large utility companies. And that's if you can imagine like a utility provider, all of the information that flows into Xano and that system, and keeping that aggregated and meeting the demands of those utility companies, that's also being powered by something like Xano. So it really is dependent on the use case. We also, it's not only these big companies, even our smaller self-serve plans, they're also processing millions of API requests in a given day, in a given month. So it doesn't have to be enterprise. There's lots of people that are able to process heavy workloads within Xano, even in our self-serve plans.
Yeah, cool. I know that you can handle a lot of data without any problem. It's not a problem. So I think Claire, I've done everything. Can you explain what have you done? Because
you're hired.
I've seen you're doing the little things. You are doing the responsiveness of the website.
Perfect. I can't write it like that. So I built the form with a photo to be uploaded. So what I did here is I selected to the upload the file field, and then I set it to only accept images. I have an address field, a place where you have a radio button, and a detailed paragraph. I did a rich text for you, Olivier.
Yeah.
And then an email and the name and the submit button, and I made it responsive.
Very nice.
So just few things.
Hired.
Yes, absolutely.
So you don't like my design? I saw Xavier told me soon there will be an AI to generate the design. So
yeah. I hope it's coming actually in 2 weeks. Like we are doing iterations on the front end only now, and there's a chance that some magic will come in the next few weeks. Yeah,
we had a very nice preview yesterday.
You could talk about AI while I will build the backend and go in Xano to build the database and the API, so we can connect both the front at the end of the live, the front and the back. We have built and we will build. So I take the mouse.
Okay,
great. So what would you like to know about AI? What's the what are the hot questions?
Yes. So we had questions about how you would integrate it in your solution, and what are the plan you have. Here, I'm just taking a look at the question we have in the chat. I just don't know which question you already did, Olivier.
No, you can just follow the other question. I could ask the question, and you can manage if you want the response. But
I wasn't able to listen and do
AI. I prepare some question about both of you. Your roadmap about AI integration.
Yes.
2 ways of integration. The first is how AI can help people to build with your solution, and the other question is how you can integrate AI to integrate to the product we build. I don't know if you understood what I want to say.
Yes, can we
help the end user and help the visual developer.
Yes.
You mean if you have an existing code base?
Neither.
Question?
I think the question is, can we integrate AI in our future application? So helping our customer using AI in our projects. The product we are building with WeWeb and Xano.
Okay. So if you
After
want,
you, Raph.
Yeah. Okay, I can start, Prakash. So I would say from a front end perspective. amazing things can be done with AI. And if you couple it with the visual development platform, then suddenly you have like superpowers. So the early tests that we've been doing, have been dedicated to the front end only. And there are two things that we're working on right now. The first is generating a UI. So UI only, no logic. And so you can ask it like, let's have a Twitter clone, let's have an Airbnb clone, or here is a screenshot. Can you just replicate it in WeWeb? And the early results are astonishing, like I was saying. And so the great thing about doing this in WeWeb is that then the output is completely manageable in no code, right? So whatever the AI will have built for you, it's using the components that are in WeWeb. And therefore, then you can drag and drop those elements, you can, modify them using the visual editor. So I think that's one really, really great thing. The second
so
thing
you
that
don't have to reprompt and ask him, please modify that, and he modified something else.
Exactly. yeah, exactly. And especially for small things. Also from an economical perspective, if you think about it, you don't have to spend tokens to do everything. You can spend tokens to set you up, and then you can use the visual platform to, do the fine tuning if you want it. We are also working on adding the capability for the AI to use your design system as the context. So for example, if you already have your colors, your typographies, and all of these things, you can use the AI to use your context to build. So that's great. And then it's linked to your design system. So when you change the color, then it's going to be replicated all across your front end, which I think is very powerful. And again, that's a great way to use visual programming, because then all of your design system, how to manage it visually in WeWeb, and then all of these things merged is actually very powerful. So that's the first thing we're working on. So UI only. Second thing we're doing is coded components. So as I mentioned earlier, you can code your own components and import them in WeWeb. And it can be very useful for more advanced components, for example, like for data visualization. Sometimes you need like very advanced graphs, and these you cannot no-code them. It wouldn't make any sense actually to do it. So you'd rather use a library that's online, right? And so today it's a big limitation for non-developers, which are 80-70% maybe of our user base, because they cannot code, right? So for them, those advanced use cases are not accessible. And the great thing with this AI integration with WeWeb is that now you'll be able to tell the AI, I want to use this library, or I want a graph that does this and that, build it for me. And again, the early test that we did, it was last week, and I think you guys had a demo on Monday, were very impressive, because you can ask it to basically build very complex things for the front end, and then you would have that coded components that you can drag and drop. So again, then you can move it around on the Canva. And the astonishing thing for me was that the LLM actually thought about properties to expose in WeWeb. And so as an example, I will show this. So I have this solar system on my desk, right? It's a replication of the solar system. And so one of my developers basically prompted, I want a solar system that's in a field of stars, etc., etc. And the AI outputted it and exposed some props, and the props were like how fast the planets are moving around the sun, and how many stars do you want in the backgrounds, crazy things that he didn't prompt for, but the LLM thought about it. And again, the astonishing thing for me here, and we definitely saw the value of having this in a visual programming platform, is that those properties, if they were in the code, to change the pace of the planets moving around the sun, it would take you, you would have to change it in the code, then you would have to see how it renders. And in WeWeb, you just have that selector, and you can just move it, and then you can see how fast the planets are moving. First, it's very satisfying, and second, it's like much more productive, because then you can use the parameters and the settings until you're actually very happy. So again, I think this is a great use case. And the last piece, and then we have two last pieces to work on. One is workflow generation. So when you want to build logic, Joyce is here. Yeah, awesome. So we did some posts already on the social media. Hey, Joyce. And so generating workflows. So when you want to start building logic in WeWeb, today, again, you can do it through visual programming. Very soon you'll be able to use the help of AI to do this, and so it will build your workflows. And again, instead of being in JavaScript, it's going to be rendered in the workflow builder in WeWeb, and you will be able to understand first what the AI built and then modify it with your mouse and keyboard if needed. And the last piece of it all is to have I would say, an AI orchestrator, AI agent almost, that can do all of this for you. So for example, instead of, for now, as you can understand, you can only ask the AI to do scoped things. For example, build this UI for me, build this component for me. And what I hope, like the cherry on the cake, will be to be able to ask the AI to do all of this for you. And so the question will be, for example, the prompt could be, I want to have, I don't know, a dashboard to see my AWS usage, right? And then the AI will be able to build not only the UI, but also to integrate that complex component for data visualization that you didn't think about, and also build the workflows together with your backend. And then that would be, for me, then the cherry on the cake. And then suddenly you would have an AI agent that would be able to build most of the things for you, but the output you will control, right? Because it will be in that visual programming Canva that you understand and that you'll be able to modify, and you will not rely only on the code to actually own your production. So that's what we're working on. And in terms of timing, we are thinking about releasing things gradually. And so the first things like the UI builder and the component builder probably before the Christmas holidays. So I would say like in the next few weeks. And then the workflow builder and the
Christmas gift
sometimes in January or February.
Olivier wanted to build an advent calendar, so it will be just in time.
That would be perfect. Yeah, that would be just on time. Yeah, exactly.
No, I think it's very interesting because for now everybody have already seen a demo of bolt.new building something, and the main problem is that you build something like if you are blind and you don't know what is built behind, and didn't and cannot manage anything, and did not understand what the AI have done, because not everybody can handle code and can we cannot always trust the AI for now, I think. So we have to keep it in control and have a look at what the AI do.
Absolutely.
For now. We have to do it.
And
Prakash, you also have
Xano side.
Yeah, so I can kind of speak to this, and I think I would just echo what you're saying, Olivier. I think there's that trust but verify piece that visual development allows. You know, it's even when you use AI right now to generate, you know, an email or a contract, we think it's amazing because we can understand the output. We can modify it to make it our own. We can change the tone, right? It does most of the work for us. But with programming, this is something that's a little bit more difficult, because if you don't understand the output, you don't own it. And the visual canvas allows you to do that. So in terms of our plans, I think there's two buckets of investment. So one is obviously helping our users build faster, and then the other is enabling them with capabilities so they can leverage AI themselves. On the first piece, we've already started launching a few things. The first and most notably being our AI database generator. So if you go to xano.com/generator, you're able to, in natural language, talk about what it is that you want it to build. You can chat back and forth about changes you want to make, and then it'll automatically generate the database and all of the CRUD API endpoints for you. That right now is just for net new users, but in the next release, it's going to be for existing users as well. The second big announcement was around XanoScript. There's a lot of things that will open up with XanoScript. And just for those of you that don't know, it's like a scripting language that represents everything visual within Xano. So why, for example, is a visual development tool having a coded scripting language? Well, if you look at large language models, that is the language that they speak. So you need to be able to train, right, what this visual development actually looks like. And because we've standardized backend development, it really gives us a gateway to speak with these models, to take all of the learnings, right, that we have learned, and then to give users the best way to build. Because especially when you're building in the backend, you want to do so in a non-destructive way. And so as we start, you're going to start seeing a co-pilot being introduced within Xano. That's going to help you build faster, but it's always going to verify, is this what you mean, right? Because again, you don't want to wipe a database table. You don't want to delete data. There's a lot that we need to make sure we're very careful about. So the way we're introducing it is very measured. It always asks you to verify. And also, there's also the rollback piece, right? Where if you've done something accidentally, we have to make sure that there are safeguards so you hop backwards.
We have the same problem. Yeah.
And this is part of the problem right now with AI. If you ask it to generate something, let's say you want to just change one little thing, sometimes the models, even the best ones, they'll just rework the entire application. So the things like the 95% you liked of it will now be completely changed, and we'll need to change something else. So it's really important, and I think Raph spoke to this fine-tuning in this visual layer is going to be, again, it's the future and what we're really excited about. So that's kind of in terms of helping our users build. The second big piece is around security. We think heavily about this, especially in enterprise organizations. They, don't necessarily trust commercial models with their data. It's proprietary, it's sensitive. So a lot of things that we are building are to help them. So the first thing that you'll see, we also announced at No Code Summit, we'll be launching in January, is a Hugging Face connector. So people that want to start playing with open source models, they'll be able to deploy it within their own cluster in a click, and then start, working with models, knowing that things are completely safe within their own control. It's not going outside to a commercial model. But even beyond that, for those that want to use commercial models, we're introducing ways where they can safeguard, for example, sensitive fields, information that they don't want sent to these commercial models, even though they still want to use those commercial models, right? So how do you make it to where you feel safe using a commercial model with most things, but to hide or sanitize the things that you don't want to see? So that's another thing we're working on. And the final thing is, if you look at our website, one of the things we've invested in from day one has been security certifications. We've got, GDPR, ISO 27001, SOC 2, SOC 3, etc. We're investing in ISO 42001, which is a new AI standard, which will be audited around our AI best practices, model hygiene. There's a lot of different components around how we look at AI safety and how we safeguard our users from potential attacks, potential scalability, security leaks, all of those things. We're going through that training and that audit process right now. So from helping our users build faster, to making sure that they can build securely and safely, to even going through training ourselves, we have a pretty comprehensive way of how we think about AI within Xano for 2025.
Yeah, clearly. Very interesting.
If interested, we had the test of the Xano AI a few days ago on this Twitch channel. And I don't know if it's on the No Code France YouTube channel, but I think so. And we played a lot with it because it's suggesting new things to add to your database. So we played a lot. Can you dream of something to build the whole app, a custom and AI with both Xano and WeWeb, and we just prompt it and we have the whole app?
That would be the second cherry on the cake.
Yeah, it's Christmas.
I don't know about what you think, Prakash, but I think we can imagine a world where this happens, given everything is API driven. There's a way, I guess, to make this happen, but with all the cautious that you guys have on the back end, especially, I think it's critical.
Yeah.
But yeah, could be. And we saw, on the side of code, it's already happening. There is a competitor to Bolt. Their name is Lovable, and they just released this almost full stack, web app builder that is on AI driven only, and they use Supabase as an integration. And so apparently it works pretty well. I gave it a try, and it was already pretty impressive. So yeah, there could be a way where you could have only one interface to build back and front.
Cool. So for now, I build my backend with Xano. So we have to connect our backend and our front end. And we just will show you for those who don't know how to use Xano, how I build it. So I create my database. It's a tickets. I call it tickets database with the field we need for the form Claire built in WeWeb. And I will show you one of the feature I really like in Xano. It's a magic generate records. I really like it. It's always a pain to build fake data to try and to develop a solution, and this one is really, really cool. So generate and 20 record, and it's done. I've got my record to try to build my application. Even if we don't use this one in our use case, I think it's really interesting to show this. So I've got my database, and when I build my database, I ask. I will just show you when you click on add a table. Enter database manually. I have something that is called add build CRUD endpoint, and it build my API endpoint in the ticket. So I've got every endpoint I need. I didn't manage the security. The security part, but of course we can, but we cannot do everything in 1 hour. I think it's quite difficult. So and I just had to add something in the post ticket, because I have to manage the image and to store the image before put it in the database field. So it's just the specific things I have to add to the endpoint that is automatically built with Xano. So Claire, now you can connect everything and show everybody how to connect it. I've got some question about education and how to learn to build with Xano and WeWeb, of course. I think I've got a question. I don't know if no, I lost the question. But someone asked if Raphael, if you had find someone to build the education program in WeWeb. It was the question. I know the answer.
Yeah. So it's not official yet, but I mean, we didn't make it official. But yes, we found someone amazing. Probably a lot of you know him already. His name is Matthew Sandis, and he's part of he's been building with WeWeb and Xano as well for about 2 years now. And yeah, he's amazing. So he's British, based in Barcelona, and so I'm really looking forward for him to start doing things. So he joined us last week. Last Monday was his first day, and so now he's like warming up to start creating some content, and yeah. So yeah, he will be fully dedicated on. He will be our education lead, and fully dedicated on trying to teach web application best practices and WeWeb best practices to the community. So I'm very excited about this.
Great news. I'm very interested by the
education part,
the education problem, etc. Because
exactly.
I run a bootcamp, and I have exactly the same question for you, Prakash. Nearly, I will read it. Someone asked it. Xano is perceived as a powerful but sometimes complex platform for beginners. What initiative have you taken to make learning more accessible, and what advice would you give to new users?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it is a big challenge for us. we are very powerful, like I think as a lot of people have said and is stated in that question. But the problem is it's a really big learning curve. And I think that there are things that we are doing that we're going to be investing in to make sure that people that are graduating from some of these other paradigms, they feel more comfortable in Xano. And we don't want to take away from our initial intent for more complex use cases. But if people with those dreams can't even figure out how to find initial success in the platform, then they'll leave us and they'll go find something else. And so the first thing is really a commitment to anyone that's listening, anyone that watches this later, that we need to do to make the product more accessible and more easy to understand so you can find success when you come to Xano. So that's something that we've talked about a lot internally, and you'll see a huge push for early in 2025. You'll see the product evolve quite a bit. I think the second thing is just to Raf's point, and I think, Olivier, we all believe that education is extremely important. And there's two pieces to this. So the first is just making sure that our documentation, the videos that we put out, our community, everything is aligned to a customer's journey when they come to us. And I think the hard thing that both Raphael and I have is we are a horizontal tool where you can build lots of different types of things, right? And so, for example, for us, if you're coming to build an application, that is very different than if you're coming to us to build a data transformation. That's very different than if you're coming to us to build an AI chatbot. So we need to make sure to understand who you are, what your intent is, and then give you the education that you need that's going to help you be successful in that use case. So outside of the existing education we have today, we're investing in ways to send users down the path that's going to help them find success faster in the product. So outside of the product investments, there's the educational investments for our users coming to the site. And then the third piece we announced at No Code Summit, which is the certification program. There are more and more people that are choosing to build with Xano as their preferred tool of choice. And we worked with our friends at Gaspacho, Clément and Frédéric, to create a certification program around becoming a builder, becoming a seller, becoming an architect, etc. So all of those three initiatives are all tied closely together, right? We have to have a unified story of education around how you find success in the product and how you upskill and level up your abilities. And so those are big things that we're going to be investing in for early next year. But if anyone has recommendations or if anyone has struggled to find success in Xano, it's Prakash, my first name, @xano.com. Send me an email. Like, I will get you connected to the right person. We will help you overcome those challenges and get you successful in the product.
I run two businesses. The first one is an agency that build a product for a medium company for their internal lead, and also I run an education program about soon WeWeb and Xano, and for now WeWeb and Supabase. It's quite difficult to build a program, an education program, because there's too many too many paths and too many profiles that need to understand. On my training, I've got people that are coming from Airtable and Make, for example. Some others are coming from Bubble, but others are also developers that want to learn how to build. And I've got also entrepreneurs that want to learn how to build their own product. So there are too many profiles to manage a unique path. So it's quite difficult to build something that allow people to be fully autonomous on their learning. So it's quite difficult. I've got a question also, because it's difficult for agency and I think also for company to find people that want that have already learn how to do visual programming with WeWeb, Xano, or any other platform, in fact, and can learn WeWeb and Xano, for example. But and also convince traditional developers to go to visual development. I think I talk with developers, with coders, and it's quite difficult to explain them what they will have as a gain when they use a no-code platform or visual development platform. So for you, what can we say to them? How can we educate them, or just make them discover platform like WeWeb and Xano?
Raphael, you can go first.
Yeah, I would say it goes back to one of the discussions we had earlier, which is when you learn WeWeb and Xano, you will learn what's a real web application, or you will learn the real web standards. And it's actually a great way, and probably the fastest way, to get to know those concepts and to get to kind of master them. And then eventually, if you want to move further and go into code, then that's your own decision. But that's maybe one argument to convince, I would say, employees or some people who are not developers yet to actually join your agency, for example, and learn those platforms. At the same time, for example, for the case of an agency, project management will remain the same. So this will be hard skills that you will learn exactly the same way, and then you will master concepts that are universal, right, in the web. So I think this is pretty good. Yeah, I would say this. I also know that there are some. For example, there is La Poste, the Poste, which is one of our customers. And so they try to build an internal education effort to try and convince people who are kind of bored with their current position, and they have some digital appetite to go and learn our platforms. So I think that's another way, but it takes a lot of efforts, right? You have to build internally your education system, and I mean, if you want to do this, it's probably better to kind of reach out to us as well, so that we can help with this. That's also going to be one of Matthew's responsibilities, is to work together with the community to build what's necessary for people to learn WeWeb internally at different companies. Now, with regards to finding people who do WeWeb or agencies, we have a listing on our website. And now we have, I don't know, maybe a few hundred agencies being listed on the website. So I know people don't have a hard time finding the agencies, but I know agencies have a hard time finding people who are already trained on WeWeb, and that's one of the things. So I think the certification is a great initiative, and we want to do the same. We're just waiting for Matt to basically join us and start managing this at WeWeb as well. But I think certification will create transparency in the market. It will also, I would say, invite people to upskill so that they can get that certification, and then hopefully create more availability on the market. So that's also another effort we want to do. And one last thing is that's going to be on our part. But I also know, for example, Open Classrooms is about to release probably in Q2 next year a training program that's going to deliver a French degree on WeWeb and Xano. So I'm super proud of this, because people will have a degree in WeWeb and Xano. How amazing is this? Recognized by the French state. And I think all of these initiatives, we are so hungry for them, and we'll help them to deliver the best training program ever, because this will create again more availability on the market, and then eventually I think WeWeb and Xano will be a skill like Node and React, I hope. So yeah, it's a beginning of a journey, but I think we're on a good way to get there.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I also kind of I won't I agree with a lot of what Raphael said in terms of approach. I think that there also is a consideration around convincing, let's say, architects or central IT or developers within larger organizations. I think it's just going to take time. I think sometimes, and this is why I have kind of tried alongside with other vendors to try to make a push for visual programming, visual development, because you have to speak their language. You know, they care about things like unit tests and like CI/CD and like the full software development lifecycle. And so if you as a vendor cannot support the things that they do to ensure proper hygiene and security as they build out their applications, it's a non-starter. The conversation is a non-starter, which is why, you know, usually when you say no-code tools, you don't think about all of those other things. You don't think about the safeguards, role-based access control, all of the things that we as vendors have invested in. So I think a lot of it is evangelism and building awareness. And that's just going to come with lots of conversations. And luckily, we've seen that in organizations, for the ones that are not, like, there's always going to be your purists, right? That no matter what, there's a certain way to build things. It's with high code, and that is it, right? Like, I don't think that it's our job to try to convince them otherwise. But more and more, especially because of AI has caused people to rethink how they develop software. And now visual development tools are becoming like something that they're willing to look at again because of this wave and this change, this paradigm shift. And so with this momentum, trying to showcase what is possible today with these tools and spreading the word, so then they can tell their groups of people like, hey, you know what, actually Xano and WeWeb, they're different from everything else, right? Like, we're able to do everything we need to and much faster and much more cost effective.
Yeah, very interesting. So Claire,
Yes.
I'm seeing you're going further that our use case.
Yes, I'm doing the wall
She's doing a full CRUD.
Nice.
But it seems my API worked.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Yes. So I just created the workflow. So here, the nice thing is, if you're trying to get the workflow on the button, it tells you have to do it on the container. And here I have an on-submit workflow. As you told, I had to encode the file in base 64 and then just made a request with all the elements. And if I switch to the preview you were talking about, Raphael, I can choose my photo thing. Here. And you can see all the debug here, which is quite fun. And here, if I submit, I can see that, yes, the workflow succeed. And that's why
I could show you that the data, I will just show you that the data is in the database. Here's the data, the last data you've insert, but I think I could just refresh.
It's here 921, no?
No, it's
this one now.
22.
22.
Yeah, here Paris, yeah.
So it works. Just to show you.
And I just created a quick page to show all the data.
Nice.
So we can see that the picture, even if my design is still very, very bad, you can see that the picture is here. So
a use case is done. Perfect. We've done it.
Amazing.
So we are near the end of this live. Do you have something a topic you want to talk about? We don't talk because we talk about a lot of things. I think it was very interesting to have your input about these topics.
On my end, I think we covered like many things and the most critical ones. I would say just, bear with visual programming, no code, however you want to call it, because I think it's progressing very fast. Because sometimes it's hard to see, but like when you see it on our seats, you can see like the market is moving to that direction. We're having conversations that we were not having before with organizations that we wouldn't even think that we would have a conversation with. So it's becoming really professionalized. It's becoming more and more mainstream. And I do think that 2025 will push this even further and faster with the help of AI, because today, like you probably felt, Prakash and I mentioned the problem of the learning curve. And I think that, with us doing efforts to making it easier to use, and with the help of AI, we are going to see the learning curve flattening, and which means that the adoption rate should explode. And so if that's the case, then I do believe that no-code visual programming will be the way to go for a lot of use cases, a lot of users, a lot of companies and organizations. So I'm very excited. It's a great community to be in, and I think the company will just keep growing. So yeah, that's just amazing. And thank you for organizing this, guys, because I think it's so great.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. I think 2025 is going to be an incredible year for all of us. And again, Olivier, Claire, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come together to talk a little bit about the future, our ideas, while you just randomly on the side built a complete
that is great. Yeah,
so it was great.
Thank you so much taking part in our live show. It was a really pleasure to have you and to talk with you. I think it was a great opportunity to have two CEOs of the most powerful stack in the no-code, low-code visual programming landscape. It was really an honor to speak with you.
Thanks for having us, and thank you everybody for being around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you, everyone.
Close the show. So see you in another no-code crash test when we will have some times to organize it. We do it when we can. So.
When you start working with Xano and WeWeb, you can't stop.
Really?
Much hiding.
We have seen you. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.